Hello everyone and welcome to Don't Be Bored. Today I'm joined by the designer of Black Metro, an upcoming sci-fi worker placement and strategic area control game. So welcome to Emesh. Please tell me a little bit about the game and introduce yourself.
Hello, Ollie. Thanks so much for having me on the show today. My name is Emesh, and I am the creator of Black Metro, a dark, scientifically advanced city set in a dystopian world. Black Metro is a competitive game for 2 to 4 players, lasting 1 to 2 hours, whereby players compete to become the next ruler of the Dark City. There are multiple paths to victory, such as military, science, and politics, which allow players to approach the game the way they want to play.
Awesome. Now there's also a book, Black Metro the Successor, that's set in the same universe. Does the book and the game overlap at all?
An excellent question. I'm really glad you asked. In the early stages of game development, I had all these ideas for the lore in my mind. It got to the point where it was not feasible to put all of the lore into the rulebook, as there was just so much. So I decided to write a separate book. I wanted to create the story such that I could tie as much of the game mechanics into the book as possible. The story underlines the premise, which leads to the tournament setting whereby the board game takes place. A written account of the tournament is included, and this is where I have tied the game mechanics into the book. For example, the technologies that the characters research in the story have the same effects as the in-game versions. I think it's really cool to have that crossover.
I love how you've sort of gone above and beyond with the lore of the game. That's really cool. Now, dialing in, the worker placement mechanics seem to be a really core thing of the game. They've got this dual use where you use them to not only use spaces but also win them as well. Could you sort of tell us a little bit what that adds to the experience, as well as was it hard balancing that sort of dual usage?
Let me start with this. What I personally find lacking in other worker placement games is the overall inability to directly attack other players' workers on the game board. Also, the one-dimensional aspect of placing workers to get stuff can lose its potency toward the final round, when acquisition of stuff can potentially yield lesser returns due to the imminent game end. Black Metro solves these problems by assigning a strength value to all workers and including an overwhelm mechanic which can prevent other players from using a space for the round. What typically ends up happening in a game of Black Metro is that the early rounds see players spreading their workers far and wide to use as many spaces as possible. In later rounds, once players have laid out their foundations, things tend to get aggressive. Players need to start considering assigning more workers, and therefore strength, to spaces, and bunching up their forces to increase resiliency against other players, thereby utilizing less spaces overall, but increasing the chances of being able to use the spaces where they have bunched up their workers. In this manner, as the game progresses, strength becomes increasingly important, and the utilization of spaces diminishes in a fairly organic manner. At the end game, players don't feel like they are wasting actions assigning workers to spaces to get stuff they don't really need. Instead, they can focus on battling other players to acquire more points while simultaneously denying their competition those potential points. The toughest part of developing this whole dynamic was balancing the strength of the game units and setting the threshold strength difference that leads to overwhelming other players' forces.
That certainly sounds like a unique twist on worker placement, which is really cool. Now, do you have a sort of favourite standout moment from playtesting?
It makes my heart leap when I hear playtesters say that they are enjoying the game, particularly when that praise is spontaneous. During the test itself, rather than, say, feedback given after the test, which could potentially be a more measured response. To define a single moment, though, throughout the 3+ years of playtesting, was during one of the later rounds of a playtest, where one of the playtesters suddenly exclaimed that they understood what was going on and what to do, eyes wide, with a sudden bolt of excitement as the light bulb sparked to life in their mind.
What tip would you give to a budding designer that's doing their own game in sort of from that playtesting and game development phase?
Test ideas early and have a degree of ruthlessness with game mechanics. Sometimes, if something doesn't work, it's best to just scrap the idea rather than try to make a mold around it or try to shoehorn it in for its own sake. Try and test with a wider demographic audience, even if some of those lie outside your intended target market. I've had some people outside of who I would market Black Metro toward give me some profound advice on aspects of the game that I and my core playtesting group would never have considered. Diversity is worth embracing for a reason. Sometimes simplicity is best. I often fall into the trap where I need to have this mechanic do all these different things. But sometimes this bloats the game experience, and I end up having to cut back.
You can certainly tell when a game has that bloat, so that's a great tip to sort of try and cut that out straight away. Now, where can people go to find out more about the game?
absoluteascendancy.com/black-metro links to my page detailing all things pertaining the Dark City.
And a bonus fun one, what game has the best meeple in it?
I particularly like the meeples they made for Vast, the Crystal Caves. Especially the dragon meeple. It looks really cool. I actually have it here, so I'm just going to show you. I think I did a really good job with this one in particular. The goblins and the warrior and the thief look decent too, but this is a boss. Absolute boss unit. Look at them.
Thank you very much to Emesh for joining me and answering the questions today. And if you want to go and find out more about Black Metro, of course, the link that was mentioned, that's going to be in the description box downstairs, so go check that out to find out a bit more about the game. And hopefully you've enjoyed the interview and finding out a little bit more about the game. And until next time, have a fantastic day gaming.